What's up, y'all? This is my name is Corey Stay Trapping with Trap Talks, the intersection of culture and tech. And today I have the honor of our guest Tierra Frost. We actually met in the Bay Area through a mutual friend, X. Um, really cool person. She's like real big on AI. But to tell you a little bit more about Tierra, she's a film director. Was just recently accepted into the Dodge College of Film and Media Arts school. You was also accepted at NYU. We'll talk a little bit more about that. And currently, or I guess maybe past, because things are changing, served as the Equity and Strategic Engagement Program Specialist at Kent School District, and the CEO and lead learning experience designer for Hard Work Ed Consulting LLC, and was a former school teacher as well. So you've done a lot. Every time we talk, it seems like the underlying theme of you is just like storytelling and stuff like that. So is there anything I missed that you did or are doing?
Um, that sounds about right. I also have recently collabed a few times. I just want to give a shout out to Converge Media. They're a Black-owned news network here in Seattle, which is pretty big to have that. And they have a partnership with Como 4, which is a big, large news network. And so I've been able to work with them a few times. So I do want to give them a shout out because I think that work has been pretty important to my growth too. Just being a getting my BA in journalism and media. I felt super imposter syndrome when I was in college, just because I went to a PWI, but being able to do work with a Black owned network was really cool for me. So I do want to give them a shout out.
Yeah, when you say PWI, for people who may not know, predominantly white institution.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So how did you meet X, if you can say?
Funny. Oh, we were like third wheeling for two different people who are dating each other. So like, or not third wheel, I can't explain it, but basically her homie, she had her homie, I had my homie, and they were dating each other. And so we never met, but we kind of all met up at some event. And so we were awkwardly like, want to be friends because these two, I don't even think they were dating yet. I think they were starting to hook up as we kind of came together. So it was like an awkward thing. And then literally since then, like, we just kind of were home. Like, I think, she asked me to like, use my garage for her car because she was about to go out of the country, and we didn't even know each other well. But she's like, I feel like I could trust you, and I was like, okay, and then like I let her, and so that kind of like led to us having like more of a bond, more of a friendship. When she came back, and she was like, oh, they came back and was like, hey, look, I think I could trust you. You kept my car for months and months and months. So, yeah.
Was that when she got deployed?
It was like, I think going to move to like Japan, stay in Japan for a little bit or something. I don't know.
Mm.
X be everywhere. X be doing everything. So
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I always wanted that because she's like, I met her because there was a panel discussion and I was asked to be on it. It was about blockchain.
Hmm.
She was on it. The lady from Living Color. She
Yeah,
was,
Erica Alexander.
yeah, she was starting a. She had started a blockchain for I think media distribution or something like that, or content distribution.
Hmm.
And me and X was on the panel, and X was just talking, and I was catching it as she was saying it, but it was like I was catching it as she's saying it. And I look out in the crowd, and I can tell it looked like it was a lot of question marks, because she was just going fast, and she was talking about how we need to be mindful about how the police are using AI and how it's biased and how they make me and you look the same, right? Because they have bad data sets and all that good stuff. And I was like, wow, like, so that's when I met her, and then she started doing those private lunches at our house. That was like real cool, So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, X is like a mentor for me too, like more than a friend, definitely a mentor, definitely has taught me a lot. I honestly don't think I would be where I am right now with filmmaking, if it wasn't for X, just because of just the Just the wisdom, also just like support. Like she gave me like 2 cameras um
Mm.
to do some stuff with, like just for free, a whole package, lenses, everything, just boom. Here, I know this is what you want to do, go for it, kind of thing. And so like for me, I took that as like, okay, somebody really believes in me because they're giving me all this equipment. And so it was like, it's not just words, but it's like, oh, I'm showing you with actions, I genuinely believe me or whatever. And so it kind of, that was like part of my journey. So shout out to X for that too.
Yeah, and that I'm assuming that equipment is like a couple $1,000s, right? Because it's
Mm-hmm. Yep.
yeah, yeah,
100%.
yeah. Um, that's dope. So why is you're a filmmaker, but why is like storytelling so important?
Because it's a really powerful vehicle for, I wouldn't even say the word change, because I feel like change is always happening. Um, but conscious change. Um, yeah, yeah, like change is always happening, right? Like we see it every day out in nature. But humans are always changing, but I don't think we're always conscious of it. So I think stories, whether you're the person telling a story, which causes you to reflect and start to be aware of who you are in the world, what that means, why you're here. Or if you're somebody who's watching somebody else tell that story, and if when they're a good storyteller, you feel connected to that, you feel that it's making you more conscious of yourself. And there's like so many movies in which I think I was growing up and I started to become more aware of myself. Or even if like little things, like I watched Edward Scissorhands the other day, and like it's a lot about like alienation and feeling, he has his little scissor hands, he's like very weird in this suburban place, and he looked gothy and all this stuff. And it's like, for somebody who's ever felt like they're outcasted or there's something wrong with them or whatever, they can find their authenticity in that story. So it's like, you don't even need to be a white guy from wherever, I think he's from California or something, Tim Burton or whatever. You don't need to be there. Maybe he's British. No, I can't remember.
Yeah,
To
yeah,
get that. So storytelling is just so like, it goes into our consciousness and changes us in a different type of way, in my opinion. So
yeah, yeah. Um, so what are the elements, or what do you need to tell a great story, right? And it's, you can say, like, you can speak it from regards of you like looking at it making a film, or if you're just literally just talking to somebody having a conversation. Like, what are those elements of like a really good story or storytelling?
yeah, I feel like what I have learned through my process of the films that I have made, making a film and telling a story are two total, like, they go together, but filmmaking and the process of it actually is really mechanical, especially if you're the one making it. Unless like there is a creative piece to it, an artistic piece. But I think the thing is, people always say they have really good ideas, really good stories, and their stories never get made. And I think it's because the process of filmmaking is a whole different process. It does not have nothing to do with if you're a good storyteller, if you're really smart or gifted at it. It is literally about your ability to manage that project and get things done no matter what. So I think that a person who may not even be the strongest storyteller, but they can get from A to Z. They can organize folders, they can manage working with all these different people, they can set up locations and timings, and like it's very like project management type more based, which I feel like for me, I kind of grew in that skill through that process, because it's like, oh shit. And I kind of am a project manager at my job. So it's like it helped me be a better director and filmmaker, because I was already doing project management stuff at work. And so it was like, okay, I'm just kind of doing this. Like this isn't really any creative stuff. The most creative stuff I did was write the script before the film, make the shot list. And obviously in the moment when you're directing actors and things like that, I kind of think of it as um like there's like a working aspect, like a very I don't know the word I'm trying to look for. Not, I don't want to say logical, but just like more um hard skills, like in that way, like you're just doing the work. And then there's that other piece that I feel like is a lot more spiritual, and it's like it comes from a bigger place, bigger than you. Like if you think of people as being AI, it's like if I'm the computer thing, I'm just working and doing my job to make the thing happen. But the spirit is the thing that's programming and giving me like the guidance of what that means. And so like when we are working with technology, we're kind of like playing that part of spirit where we're giving it some life, some voice. Like, you know, if you do chat GPT but you want to make it sound more human, you put a little bit of story in it. That's how you kind of alter it, you know. And so with every story's ever been told, but it's you going in and saying, well, how do I say this through my lens? And that gives it life, basically, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a big way of saying what was even the question? I got lost in that.
What makes a good story? Like,
Oh, it makes a good
how does
story. So
what makes a good story or good storytelling?
yeah, so I think what makes good storytelling to that point is authenticity. Um, I think that the deeper somebody will go within is gonna give you something strong that you can feel attached to. Um, I think when it's really personal to a person, and this is just for me experience trying to write things that feel like they're palatable for other people, and then me writing my truth. They're two very different stories, and people have reacted to them in very different ways, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think just like being authentic and not being afraid is really good storytelling. I also think everybody has their own definition, but for me, I like when people can mix the way they're telling the story, like the music and the imagery and the clothing that like. I like when somebody creates a world, when they create a new world with their work, and that's probably why I like Edward Scissorhands or something like that so much, because it's like, dang, we're in a whole new world right now. So yeah, I think that's subjective, but that's my opinion. Authenticity and a level of skill of how do you create a world.
Yeah. And I remember like when I was a kid, I would go to the movies with my mom, and she loves reading books. And then she always tells me when she goes to the movies never do the book justice, because I think they just have more time to tell a more developed story, right? I used to always wonder, like, why is she in here crying in the movie? You know what I'm saying? I was like, well, that's weird. Like, this is not real, or we're not in this situation thinking about it from my kid mind, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I think it goes at the heart of what you were saying. It's like authenticity, right? So it's like, you hear like a DMX song or whatever. Like I've heard instances of where DMX would be performing on stage or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and he'll be praying, and then all of a sudden people bust out crying, right? So,
Yeah.
like just looking at it kind of like objectively, it's like good storytelling touches your senses too. It's like you can like smell the food or whatever, or you get goosebumps and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
That's the spiritual piece.
So explain that. Like, what you mean? Because you touched on that. You were like, it's deeply spiritual. Like, what? Can you go a little bit deeper into that?
Yeah, I just think that like um you know, the thing that connects everybody, there's some ever present, like most people can excuse the noise in the back. I can't. That's my 86-year-old great aunt. She don't care what I'm doing. She's like, I'm gonna do me.
Yeah,
But yeah, no, I think the spirit piece is like a piece that the way I describe it is like sometimes when I'm writing, I could tell it's not me because it feels very divine. It's like I'm getting the story to my head. It's like it'll come out in a picture and I just see it very clearly. But it couldn't have, like, on a day-to-day basis, you know, I'm not thinking like that high level. So it's like something else is greater that is kind of like putting the story together. And I think people really get stuck when they try to control that process. Like the whole writer's block thing is like you thinking that you got the story, but the story was always going to be the story. You know what I'm saying? Like that story is going to get told regardless. If you don't do it, somebody else is going to do it. So it's like, what is your level of obedience to say, right now I'm stuck because I'm trying to force how the story's supposed to go. It's like, because sometimes you get excited about your stories, so you're like, ooh, and then you're stuck, and then you could do something as simple as going for a walk or going for a nap or whatever, and you'll wake up and it'll be right there and it'll be clear. And it's like you may have needed more information before the story could get told, depending on who you are and how you want to do it. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you have the mindset of I want an excellently told story, then it's going to probably take a little different process. That's just my process. But like, I know, like, I could go outside, take a walk somewhere and see a blue mailbox. And I'm like, oh, shoot, mailbox. The kid needs to walk past the mailbox because the color blue draws in, you know, like, it's like it's like you're putting together a puzzle in your own head. But I think that, like, you know, different people get different types of stories based on where they're at. That's why I think it's a spiritual thing, because you could see somebody else's story and be like, this is kind of basic, you know, whatever. But it's like, that's all they're at that level right now. So it's like, it's kind of all they could take. Whereas some people, you watch their movies and it's like, oh, this is kind of deep. Like, this is another thing. And it was almost like spiritually they could handle those concepts because they've done the work or they've had the experience. Or, you know, DMX, he has so much life experience that you feel, and he's real about it. You know, he's not trying to pretend, he's not, and he also doesn't try to make it seem like those things were all good. Like, you know, he's just really raw. And I think he doesn't, I think that spirit's raw. You know, when I say that when you're trying to control the story, that's logic. You know, like, spirit isn't the logic piece. Like, logic will be like, no, I can't make these characters fall in love because it wouldn't make sense. That's the person's best friend. Spirit's like, no, make them fall in love with the best friend so people can understand what deceit looks like, or whatever looks like. So then when people are experiencing, they can feel that, you know, like, if that's really where, you know, a pain that you have. But like, sometimes people try and avoid that truth, you know, just to like make stuff make sense, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes
Oh
sense.
yeah.
Yeah. Like I think about like how you said how you met X, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
like y'all were third wheels. Like I would have never thought that y'all met on like being the third wheel, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
like, you know, um some of my most tight relationships started very awkwardly. Like I remember I went to this restaurant back home in North Carolina, and it was this new employee at this restaurant, right? And so I always ordered more food and I would take it to go. And so he's like, "Hey, are you trying to like steal food?" I'm like, "No, I do this all the time." And so he spoke to the owner, and me and the owner were cool, and then we ended up being like really tight. And it's, you know, you never know. I basically what I'm getting at is what you're saying, right? It's like Bruce Lee, you know, talks about being like water, like go with the flow, right? So like, so how do you balance going with the flow and saying, okay, I don't, you know, I just want to tell a good story or whatever you, or let your ideas flow versus like saying, okay, we need to be objective about this, because those are two different completely mindsets, skill sets.
Yeah. And I think that that's like that's a personal choice, and I think that there's space for all different types of creatives. Um because some people go real flow, you know, and some people go real and some people are somewhere in between or going back and forth, and I think there's space for everybody. But for me, Rick Rubin has a really good book called The Creative Act. And he talks about how to manage being creative but also getting the work done. And that's what I really liked about that book. And kind of setting these, like, could just kind of helps you, like, a tool for creatives to kind of get that work done. So, you know, for me, I'm one of those people where it's like, damn, I just really trust my intuition. I don't know, man. Everybody's different, but I really trust my intuition. Like the Nike spec ad that I dropped a couple days ago, that was like 2 years ago I wrote that, but it wasn't the right time. It wasn't I didn't have the right team. I didn't have the right, and I pay attention, like in the spirit piece. I believe everybody is that. So it's like, if someone says something to me that makes sense, like at the time when I wanted to shoot it, my mentor, he does music videos for like a lot of popular artists. I was his script supervisor for the Kai Cenat short film that he did, and he does a lot of other stuff or whatever. So I've worked with him a few times. And you know, he was like, "You got to have good sound. like he was telling me like these things that I have to have that at the time I didn't have. So I'm like, all right, the story is ready, but this isn't done. 2 years later comes around, I'm like, I'm ready to do it. I got a team. I've put in more work, so people trust me to direct them. Like sometimes stuff don't be ready because you're not ready. So I put in more work. I have more connections. I can convince people to get behind my project. Okay, now everybody's on board. Oh shit! Now there's some kinks. It's been 2 years. There's some things that need to change about the story. Little things, but they got changed. But I set a deadline, and I always do that with myself. Like if I already get the story down, once the story's on paper, it's a deadline next. I don't care what else is going on. Like I have to give myself a deadline once the story's done. If the story's not done, then I don't. So that's kind of how I keep myself in order, where I'm kind of in between flow and completion, you know?
So what it sounds like I'm hearing too is like you let yourself not have a deadline when you're creating the story or the script, but when it's time to actually put pen to pad or audio to sound and stuff like that, right? That's when you're like, okay, we have to be objective about how we set this up.
Yes, that's literally it. Like once I have a rough draft done of a script or outline or whatever, that's when I'm like, because I'll then give myself deadlines to finish the rough draft, like to make it to a final draft. That's when I give myself deadlines. So once a rough draft is complete and everything is like the pictures there, then I'm like, okay, now you have 4 days to finish it. Now you have this many days. You need to get these people to look at it. You need to get this feedback by this time. And then I start my whole process. And I got this really fire folder from actually my homie who graduated from NYU. He gave me the folder that they use, and it's like industry standard for when they produce a film. And so I just do with the checklist thing. I put it all out from draft to completion, final date, make that date. Once I get a crew and I'm like, okay, can we all agree to this day? Boom. That's kind of how I've done it so far. But yeah, once I'm done with the draft, it's time to. There's no going back. So I just make myself accountable by just telling everybody who agrees to. I get hella people to agree to be on the project, because then I have to do it because everybody agreed, and it's like, what are you doing, bro? You know what I'm saying? And I care too much to like. I don't want to look like that person. So
Yeah.
that pressure has made me be able to finish like about 4 projects in the last couple weeks. Last year,
Oh
3, 4.
wow.
I've had about 4.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So what was it like working with Kai Cenat? What was that like?
It was cool. Honestly, like I could see why he was so successful working with him, because so I was script supervisor, so I had to make sure that they had their lines correctly, like especially on shooting day. But the director also wanted me to work with them behind the scenes and make sure, okay, they got their lines, they understand, whatever. And I've worked with actors before, so it's like especially with like going over lines and things like that. So that was cool. And it was cool. He was really fucking dope. He's really nice. And I saw why he was so successful, because he pays attention to detail. Like he's very hands-on, very detail oriented. Like I would notice how sometimes like he would want to, after a take, he want to go back, he want to watch it, and he would start to catch stuff. Like he was like, wait, isn't that supposed to be this thing, or did this thing happen, or blah blah blah. And it was like he was so like dedicated. He wasn't just showing up to act. And on top of that, we did it in like a week or something, and he memorized his line. Him and Ray, they memorized their lines so fast. Like, so I think they had 2 or 3 days to memorize their lines, and they had them. I don't think there was ever a time where he really didn't know his lines.
Mm.
Maybe he called for a line like a couple times. Like other than that, like, and so I was like, okay, this kid, I can see why he's so successful, because I've been on other sets where I've even seen other bigger actors or whatever case kind of not care. Like they just came to do their little job and then go, kind of thing. So
Mm.
yeah.
And I honestly I would have never gathered that by the persona, for better or worse, that he's created with his streaming, right? I think he's wildly successful, but you telling that he's like super detailed, I would have never guessed that. Um,
I think even that's intentional. I think he knows his audience and he knows what he's doing, which is like pretty like I don't think you accidentally become that successful. you know.
Mm.
Like it may look that way, but every single person I've seen, I'm like, oh, you're kind of you're playing two people. You know how to show up on camera versus who you really are, and who you really are is a really smart person. You know, like you know what you're doing.
But the tie back what we were talking about earlier about storytelling, he really nails that. So he went on Shannon Sharp. He was on Club Shay Shay. I'm not sure if you've seen it. Um,
Kai?
yeah, Kai, yeah. So
Oh no, I didn't.
after the All-Star game, they had a celebrity All-Star game, and he was mad
Mm.
he didn't get a lot of time. And so he goes on Club Shay Shay. He's like, man, I really ball. This is what I really do. He's like, and so he pulls out his phone and he shows a video that he pre-made. It's his highlight video, right? And so in the highlight video, he's going against little kids balling, and he's obviously crushing them. And
Mm-hmm.
so Shannon Sharp, Shay Shay was just like, he's like, dude, these are kids. He's like, nah, man, they preteens. Like, come on, man. Like, you know, he's obviously short, so it's like he's like they're not that shorter than him. And I was like, wow,
Mm-hmm.
gosh, it's funny. It was just so comical, and it was the way he set it up. It was almost like the way he set it up, you would have thought that he didn't think about it. But when I watched it again, I'm like, oh, he playing that off the rip because he literally had it. He had it pulled up in his phone like that quick. He's like, hold on, let me wait,
Mm-hmm.
pull it up. Boom, he showed it. He showed it on the camera, and I was just like, this guy is a character. He's like hilarious. Like,
Yeah, he's ready. He's definitely one of those people who's like always doing something. Like, what's next? How do I get this? What's next? How do I, you know what I'm saying? Like, definitely.
yeah, yeah. And he's not doing any time either. Him and the two other people because of what happened in New York where they didn't get a permit. So
Oh
he's
yeah, yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So congrats to him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. Um, so I got a funny question for you. So DDG, right?
Mm-hmm.
You helped do one of his music videos. I gotta ask you, did he do the double voice with you? Did he show you his other voice? Did he do that while he was working with him?
No, I never heard his little other voice. I don't know about that. um, yeah, no, he never talked in his other little voice. I don't know if that's real or not.
Yeah.
Um, my cousin's good friends with him, so I don't know. Maybe I'll ask him. I haven't even thought about that, but yeah, no, he was really chill and yeah, no, he didn't do his voice.
Yeah. So yeah. So how did you come about that opportunity working with him in the actual music video? What was the name of that video that you did with him?
Storyteller,
Yeah.
storyteller.
Oh, okay.
Um, yeah, so Mike, who's my mentor, like he's a the one I was telling, he does music videos. Shout out Director Prime, Black Screen Productions. Him and Monique, they're super fire. They do a lot of dope videos for a lot of artists. And essentially he just kind of pulls me in sometimes for to work with him with writing. So like we like do like little team brainstorms and just like, hey, what would kind of look good for this? So like for this specific one, he called me up and was like, hey, like you want to write on this thing, or like, or I think Monique kind of called me up. She's the executive producer on that, and she kind of called me up and was just like, hey, can you write a script to this scenario? So I wrote them a script, and then they're like, oh, okay, like, and then Mike was like, oh, like you should like talk with us more about it. And so then kind of did that and ended up flying me down to LA to do the video. And because I, like help with the writing in the I was helping with the directing of the acting that scene or whatever, because they had like a pre-scene to this to music. And so kind of was just able to do that. And then also Mike knows that I want to be a director, and he's super dope because he's like, you're a woman and I want to give you that, like, that support and opportunity, because obviously that doesn't happen a lot, but also like having a woman's eye for certain things. And so he's always been super like dope, letting me like, hey, what do you think? Like, how should this next scene go? Do you think, how should they do this, whatever? And so like he actually took my ideas into account. And so since then we've kind of like done little work together every now and then when it comes to like building ideas for some of the the videos or whatever. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's how I kind of got on that.
Yeah. So like what's your process for writing scripts? You know, I've heard of some people like take a long walk, some people may smoke some weed or whatever. Like
Yeah,
what's your process for like writing scripts?
man. Um, One, I have to feel a little inspired. So I have two different ways because like when someone asks me to do it for something, I have to look for the inspiration for that specific thing, which is usually not hard for me. Um, but I have to find some type of inspiration. And then for me, it's just hella fun because it's like I go on a whole wild, like growing up, I watched hella movies. Like I was like, they would not take me away from that TV and movies. It's funny because I don't even really watch them now. Like I can't, it's so weird. But back then I watched hella movies, hella TV. So I have hella references in my head. I remember all of these scenes and these ways in which you could do something cool. Like, and so I think for me, like before when I was writing and I was kind of novice. Like I didn't really know what I was doing. Now because I've directed, I write as a director. So because I edit. So because I direct and edit, I know what is gonna look good after the fact or how you can edit something. So it's helped me as a writer. And then as a director, you have to see the picture. So now I'm writing for visuals, not necessarily the word piece so much, but the words are important too, and that's another thing. Honestly, for me, it's a lot of studying other people's scripts that I think are really good to get me to a better place. And then what I do is I make an outline. I start with a outline and I just kind of let my imagination kind of do its thing on my outline, so they're hella messy, like, but I do it with images and words. So if I'm working on something like Lucid, this short film I did, Lucid, it was like I could see this girl sitting under a tree. So I found a picture of like, and she's going through this like whole thing. So I'm like, I found it, the word, like the picture Alice in Wonderland came into my head. So I put a picture of Alice in Wonderland. Then like something else came in my head. So I put a picture, and I was just putting pictures of stuff that came to my head. And then it turned into this collage of technically the story. So that again, that's like that spiritual piece where I'm like, okay, I have a paper, I have a thing, but I'm gonna let you do your thing first. So I'm putting all that together, and then I write out a whole summary of how I see it. So it can be super messy or blah blah blah. This happens and this happens, this happens, and then I start organizing in how deep the story is. It depends because it's like for some stuff you don't gotta go that deep, but then I'll break it down the characters. I'm like, who is this character? What do they want? Why do they want it? What's the whole purpose of this? What am I trying to say with this? um I had a meeting yesterday with my homie DeWitt, who Tambia Productions. He's really dope too, and we're collabing on something. And he was like, "You're," and I was just asking questions. He's like, "You ask questions like a writer." Like, well, I never even thought of it. Like, why are you asking that question? I'm like, I mean, to me, that's how we're gonna tell the story. We have to understand why this person did this or what they want or whatever. I think for music videos a little bit easier because it's all just like imagery, and I think about the audience with music videos. I'm like, this specific artist would look cool saying this specific thing or doing this specific thing. Or I think this artist fans would really like. Um and it's always something that I don't even think, me personally, if I had control of that, I don't even think the artist would necessarily think that they would see themselves doing that. But in my opinion, I actually see, like when I see certain people, I see archetypes because I've studied archetypes and stuff. And
Mhm.
so it's like I will see that person's archetype. So I'm like, I know they fit these type of stories, and their audience will feel more connected to them because they fit this type of archetype, whatever. Um, so yeah, I don't know, but
That's dope. So when you say archetype, you talking about personality, like personality
yeah,
type?
like type of person, yeah, like type of like yeah, like let's say somebody has like a gothy archetype or a rock star type figure or a hero type figure or a businessy, like it's like these different characters, I guess, that people kind of like show up as, especially when they're doing their art, whatever. And so if you could kind of sometimes play on that, and you could play on it in like ways where like people don't realize that's what you're doing, but it's like if somebody kind of has this like more fairy type thing, it's like put them near water or grass or whatever, because their aura and their vibe kind of gives that, and it's a believable story with how they present themselves, you know.
Right. So so how important is character development when you're working on films or even music videos? I know depending on how longer it is, the more potentially important, but or a sitcom or what have you. But you know, for people who don't know what is character development and like how important is it in your process?
I think it's super important. I'm still learning, you know, the value and how to develop characters. But I do know that the deeper you go into a character, um, the more you get out of the story. I think every character is different though, and I try to like make I my goal is to make my characters unlikable to start out with. And so my challenge to myself has been, how do you make your main character less likable? Because I think people have a tendency to want to make they're writing this person and they're attached to it, so they're like, how do it's hard to make them not likable. So it's easy to be like, there's a villain and then there's them. But I think that's so prescriptive and so many done. And it's like people want to see flawed. They want to feel how they really are, you know? And so I'm interested in kind of like developing more honest characters than I am creating great, nice characters, you know? And I think like that that could be like, oh, they have an aspect of niceness, but why? You know, like why are they nice? You know, like is that because they were forced to be when they were growing up? Is that like, I think if you're gonna make a nice character, you better know why they're so nice, because realistically everybody has some meanness in them, or if they don't, they're really just genuinely nice. Like what is it about them, so that we can understand that type of person, you know what I'm saying? So I think character development is like super super important. I think people that do a really good job of it are really successful because we remember their characters, you know? Like there's certain directors who I still know the name of your character and I'm still attached to your character because you really gave us a character, and then it gives the actor somebody to be, you know?
Yeah. So you said something interesting. You like making your characters unlikable in the beginning. Um,
Mm.
how do you make a character unlikable?
Shit, you give them hella flaws or make them say problematic things that piss people off. I haven't, I nothing I've released so far, I think, has done that yet, but stuff I've written recently has.
Yeah.
And I've had people read it and they like it. I mean, some people were like, oh, like they did that, you know, like the main character made that choice, you know, they're supposed to be this. And I'm like, yeah, they did. Like, I want you to be bothered by them, because I think also that you can't really transform something that's already you're presenting as a pretty package. So I think what I try to do is like put them in a scenario that's like a very hard decision, and then make them make the decision that other people feel like naturally would say that's not the best decision to make. You know, like they get into the class and it's like, you don't cheat on the test, because if you cheat, you fail this entire class, you know. And we see the main character sitting there and like, you know, fucking cheat, and it's like, what the fuck are you doing, you know? Like they just said, you know, and like everybody's pissed, but it's like you don't understand their desperation or something like that. Or they cheat and they lie and they say it was somebody like somebody else cheated off of them, and like now it's like, well, why the fuck would they do that, you know? And then you have an opportunity to kind of be like, go more deep with that character, because people don't like them, but then you start to reveal, well, they were so desperate to do that, or they're getting abused at home, and so for them they could not get caught, like there's just no way, because this is what they're dealing with. So then it's like, that's how you create more humanized characters, because everybody does what they do for a reason. Like there's
Right.
nobody on earth is just, you know, willy-nilly. Like every action's coming as a reaction to
Right.
something else. So
Yeah, so when you were talking about character development, I'm thinking about The Color Purple, the new rendition they made of it.
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of the character's name, but he played Fatima, I think her name is, love interest. He was the husband. He was abusive,
Yeah,
and
Mister.
yeah, Mr. I can't think of Danny
Or
Glover played him originally, but in the new version,
okay, yeah. What's his name? This man, I know this man.
yeah,
It's
but
amazing.
no one likes him, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when I was literally thinking about this as we were talking about character development, but there's no really context on the why he was the way he was. And then there's a
Mm-hmm.
scene in the movie where they're all eating at the table, and his dad comes in, and his dad says some like pretty. He said a misogynistic thing, and I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
wow, this is where he gets it from. And he probably was abused as a kid in his home, so or saw his mother abused by his dad, so he's repeating the same cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I'm like, wow, I don't know. I just wanted to say that, but I just think about like I guess there's very nuanced ways to do character development. From what I'm saying, it can be super detailed, or it can just be showing like I said, a relative do one thing or two things. You're like, wow, this is why this guy is such a hole, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like it don't even have to be hella stuff. It could literally be one moment that you understand, or you can make the whole movie about that. It's like it's really that person's choice and how they want to tell the story and why. And I think that's why like when people criticize films a lot, I'd be like, man, bro, make a film and then criticize. Like I don't be criticized. Nobody's nothing. Like people be asking me, I'm like, yeah, I don't know. Like, like they finished. Like, cause like honestly, it's so hard to it's because there's no one way to do it. It's like you could give us all the color purple script, like me, you, whoever else, bunch of people we know, and we're all gonna tell that story very differently. And yes, like there is a skill to it that you can, do that like makes yours maybe feel stronger or whatever. It's the angle you take it. But I also think that comes natural. That's like a person thing. There's like a person who tells really good stories, most likely, you have a conversation with them and you feel something too, because there's a level of wisdom that's there. And so that's what they're doing. They're just transmuting that into a film or whatever. But like yeah, like it's hard to do that. It's hard to do that with every character, you know what I'm saying?
It's
Like
impossible,
that's
yeah.
it's very impossible. It's like sometimes people want to know more. It's like, bro, there might not be more. Like sometimes people want to move on from their own stories. Like some shit you just be like, like I don't want to talk about it anymore. I said what I said and I felt how I felt, and
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, like I think about like the Power series, right? By 50, Fantasia was the name, dude, who was the main character in
mm-hmm,
I
mm-hmm.
should have known
And
that she.
Coleman Domingo was played Mister.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, you think about Power, right? And like the first Power that was centered around Ghost. And then I remember watching it and I'm like, why is gosh, I'm blanking on his right hand man, the white guy. He was
Tommy.
huh?
Tommy.
Yeah, Tommy. And I'm like, why is Tommy so cold? It's like it was just so weird to me. And then they opened up when he went to Chicago, and that's his whole series. And they delved deep into the relationship with they delved deep into the relationship with his mom or whatever. You're like, wow, I see why he's so cold. And like you
Mm-hmm.
said, like if you really there's not enough money and resources to like tell a full character development on each person in the movie. It's impossible.
Yeah. That's even to that series point. It's like everybody hated Tariq, and now in his series, they don't be wanting him to die or like get caught or whatever. It's like so many people have been like, "Dang, I used to hate this little." Now I'm like not wanting him to get caught. I was like, "Dang, I still don't like Tariq." Like they did a good job of making me not like Tariq.
I stopped watching Power because of Tyreek. I think it was after his sister got killed. I'm like, man, he's stupid. I
Tariq,
stopped watching it. I stopped watching it. And then he
they
killed
did
his
a good
pops.
job.
Yeah,
I didn't change my opinion on him at all.
yeah, yeah. Um, so were you impacted directly or know anybody impacted by the Writers Guild of America strike?
I knew of people who were affected, but not uh close to me. Like they're acquaintances, but I didn't get all up in their business. Like I just know that it affected a lot of people, but I wasn't affected about it.
Yeah, got it, got it. Um, So yeah, I know we kind of bouncing around, but you're from originally from Seattle. You know what was it like growing up in Seattle? And I'm gonna be honest, I didn't know there was like black people in Seattle, but apparently there was a lot at one point
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
due to the Great Migration after slavery, right? Like black people went everywhere. They went, you know, to they went to New York, they went to the West Coast, the Bay Area, Seattle, Portland.
Mm-hmm.
I've spoken
Yep.
some. Portland was a big spot. Didn't know that, but
Yep.
what was it like growing up in Seattle?
Yeah. Yeah, to that point, it was like there for me when I was growing up, there was a lot of black people because my family lives in the CD Central District, or the South End. There's two, so there's like two really predominantly black areas, the CD and the South End. My mom grew up in the South End, my dad grew up in the CD or whatever, and they used to beef with each other, but not my parent. Well, them too, they beef too, but those two people used to make it a thing. Um, but so I have family in both those areas. So growing up, it was dope. Like I actually really like growing up in Seattle. I feel like it's a cool place. Like in hindsight, it's a cool place to raise your kids at then. Now it's wild, but then I would say it was cool because it was like very, all those people come from the South. They basically made their own like home here, neighborhood, black neighborhoods, all this stuff. And everybody kind of knew each other and was like it was like you're treated like family on the block. You know how that is. It's like this person watches this person.
Right.
Like I'm in my family home right now that my great grandparents got when they first came here, back in the day, escaping the Rosewood massacre. So like there's like my great grandpa got this house, and then like at the time they only let black people live here because they were doing redlining, and they said, okay, you guys are only allowed to be in this area, but it was because they used to have like a logging industry, and so the air quality was bad. Now this area, $1 million homes all around, barely any black people that I see, and everybody, it's like right by the water, so it's like really nice, really like it's beautiful view, like the sun comes out in these windows every day and stuff. So um I grew up with hella cousins, you know hella cousins, hella siblings, hella, surrounded by family. Everybody was athletes or entertainers or teachers. So that's pretty much literally, if you look, I mean, I think you could even see sometimes my cousin's little jersey from he went to Texas A&M. He was really good. Play with Johnny Manziel and Miles Garrett and them guys, that group or whatever. And so like my family's all been, my dad played football at UW and stuff. So it's always been pretty dope for me. My grandparents had a pretty big church in Seattle, and so just very community minded. Like I was raised to be very community minded, that like we serve other people. My nana was a playwright, and so I think that's kind of where my writing stuff, where I seen that, because I seen her have success in it. Like she would have full um sold out plays in Seattle, little black plays at the churches, at the Langston Hughes Performing Arts Center, like all these places. And so she kind of instilled in me like the process of writing, and just like she's like, you want something done, you do your part, God will do the next part. You do your part, God will do the next part. And so like I kind of follow that flow. Like I'm like, okay, if I could, I'll do my part, I'll write the story. Now I'm waiting on, okay, God, who's gonna assist me, you know what I'm saying, or like who's gonna and then shit will just pop, like people will just come in, hey, you look for or this location just open up, or whatever the case may be. So I definitely think my upbringing is a big reason why I even went to education and stuff like that too. So
Yeah, yeah. You said a couple things. I don't really want to gloss over them, but like redlining happened everywhere. Like it
mm-hmm.
happened. Chicago is an example of that. If you look at LA, the way they built the highway system is
Mm-hmm.
it's an engineering they did not do a good job engineering that, but the way they created it was to keep black people out of the white neighborhoods, right?
Yep.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and it's crazy to hear that they had redlining in Seattle too. I would have never known that, but it's sadly also not surprising as well.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, no, they had it over here, but it was kind of like, damn, it's kind of nice because we all just kind of lived around each other, like like I know it's like not a positive thing, but it was like we made it a positive thing. Like we created a whole culture. Like if you come to, and like a lot of it's dying out because of gentrification, which is everywhere too. But like the foods and like because people are bringing food. Like there's a spot down the street from my house called Catfish Corner. It's been around for a long time. Or Ezel's, which is really popular. Like Oprah, all those people have been in there, have signed off on it, and so it's like that's a chicken place, whatever. But like it was like all these different Black owned places and spaces that like were developed from that, and like it was a really good culture. Like it was like people. My great uncle, he's one of the founders of the CD Panthers, was like a really like good Black, majority Black, but like anybody could be on the team, whatever. Like football team where a lot of people who went farther been on it, or Rotary where a lot of people are in the NBA now, were on Seattle Rotary and stuff like that. So it's like there has always been a really strong community. Jimi Hendrix is from here, Quincy Jones, like
I
they
knew
all
Jimi
went.
Hendrix was, yeah.
Yeah,
I didn't know
Quincy.
Quincy was.
Yeah, Garfield down the street. There where my a lot of my family members went. They named their little performing arts center after him. They got a fire, band and stuff. So people are bringing stuff from the South here. Like my upbringing is very Southern. Like I know that just from just the all the traditions and all the stuff we still do, that they do in the South. So
Yeah. And you talked about your grandparents or your great grandparents left because of the Rosewood massacre.
Rosewood massacre.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah, no, I know like my great uncle did like a newspaper thing for this Seattle newspaper, just talking about why home ownership was so important to his generation. It was because my grandparents had to escape the Rosewood massacre, went to Georgia, I believe, and then came all the way here. They're mostly from Georgia, Florida. I have family from Louisiana and stuff like that too, but this specific house, Georgia. And yeah, they were escaping that. They came here because I guess another family member told them this was like a good place, like to like for Black folks, like it wasn't as racist, and like you can do well here or whatever. And so I think there was somebody here or whatever, and they told them to come here, so they came all the way over here, um, and started basically a new life.
Yeah. Yeah. And we also gotta be mindful they didn't have cars. So this is just what, horse and buggy basically?
No, it wasn't that far back. I think they had a car. I don't know. Shit, actually, that's a good question. I've never asked how they got over here, but it was a travel. But this is like in probably the 1930s or 40s or something. So
Okay,
they
yeah,
had cars.
there were cars. Yeah, there was cars.
They had cars, but I don't know if that's how they got here. I don't know if they got here bus cars. I was thinking about that too, because I'm writing a story about that, and I'm like, where they use in the green books and stuff like that. So that's some history I got to dig into.
Yeah, yeah. So you grew up in Seattle. How did you make your way to the Bay?
Because for my master's in education, I went to University of San Francisco.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
I got into that program for urban education and social justice. And I just applied to places I just kind of wanted to live, and I thought their programs would be cool. And so I ended up in the Bay, and yeah, it was dope. It was like a life-changing experience for sure, living in Oakland.
Mm. Yeah. So you were in the Bay for a long time. I was
Yeah,
in
about
my
6 years.
oh you was oh okay. Oh, so we got there probably around the same time. Because I moved there from North Carolina in 2015, December 2015.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's either the year. I came later that year.
Mm.
Yeah, late to 2015.
Yeah, yeah. Um, that's dope. So we talked a lot about I know I'm jumping around, but we were talking about how like in Europe or whatever, the first people there were actually African. Can you talk a little bit more about that? I mean, we all know about Cheddar Man. So
Right.
blue-eyed
Um,
brown
yeah,
hair.
I be going down rabbit holes because I just feel like as a storyteller, I should understand. This is the thing about history too. It's like every history that we've gotten has been told to us, given to us by our oppressors. and we just take that as our information. And so like that's kind of problematic because it's like, what angle do they have? What, and then we all know, like, we're like, why don't we learn nothing? Like, it just doesn't make sense or whatever. And so I'm just interested in alternative histories, or like not alternative because it's not alternative, it's more to the story. And so I'd be going down rabbit holes, but I found this she's this black um she's a professor, but she's also something else. I think her name's Dr. Marie Charles. I might be messing it up, hopefully not, but she is a black British woman, and she basically has like done a lot of research finding out that a lot of black people actually have their origins in Britain. Is it's like that's like literally where their families came from before they came to America. And so a lot of those last names are actually black British last names. And so she found like all these manuscripts and all this stuff, and then she kind of shows how like a lot of the British stuff that we think is British is like was actually African in nature. And like so like she'll show certain statues or certain sculptures or certain whatever's, and she's like, if you look at this is older, and this is what this thing is, to show like these people who migrated, they took their stuff and they remade it into something else. And like we see that every day, like even to the point of my family coming over here and me growing up here. It's like I'm gonna have some West Coast to me because I was raised more in the West Coast, but still have some Southern influence to that, And so it's like there's, people go traveling from Africa or whatever and going to these places and having those cultural mixes and creating something new. And so she's just able to peel back the layers. And she made a good point. All the archaeologists, all those people are old white men on the team. So the way they look at artifacts, they don't have an African consciousness. They don't have a or indigenous American consciousness, indigenous because black people are indigenous all over the world, but they don't have this consciousness to say, oh shit, this is I recognize this as something else. Like in my DNA, I could kind of feel that this is older than this or this whatever. So they be calling stuff the wrong stuff, or like, like
Yeah.
not attributing things to what they really or where they really came from.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think when you touch on that too, I think about the Moors, right? And how they ran Spain, right? And if you look at people from Spain, their skin color is on the darker side, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's like I've had this discussion also with one of my cousins. If you look at Latinos, a lot of Latinos are African,
Yeah.
but a lot of
Mm-hmm.
them don't know it,
Yeah.
right? Because if you look at it, Latin America, South America, Central America, that's where most of your slaves came in before they hit North America or U.S. North America. They came through the Caribbean first. So, um,
Right.
yeah, it's
And
like,
even aside from people who were enslaved, like there was indigenous people in those lands before that even happened that are dark skinned, have woolly hair. Like there's like, if you look in the Philippines, they call them the Negrito people, but they have like afros, darker hair, like and like it's like there's also indigenous people who are all over the world who look like have those features. And so like I feel like there's just so much unknown history. Like even for me, when I unpack my family's history, and like I learned a lot of my family were like always free people, and that's why like they kind of like I looked because I did my genealogy. It was like they were owning land in time when land shouldn't have been owned, like they should have been enslaved, and they were free and they had land. And so I learned that they were like free people, which I didn't even know. Like I heard my great grandpa like traveled all over the world. He was in London and all this stuff. I'm like, how? It was slavery. Like this is confusing me, you know what I'm saying? And so like there's just so much more of the story. That's like I think like in the future, if people look back and they see like, oh, there's hella black people in prison, in their head they're gonna be like, oh, all black people were in prison at that time. You know what I'm saying? Instead of knowing that there was black people doing all kinds of stuff. I think that's how the past is too, but they don't really give us that story. There's just like slavery, drugs, jail. You know what I'm saying? Like it doesn't they're not given the full scope of blackness and what that looked like at the time.
yeah. And then, and to your point, right? Like, the first Australians were Aboriginal. If you
Yeah.
look at the Samoans, they're basically African. I guess Polynesian too. You can put them in there. Like, and I know you're familiar with Mansa Musa. There
Mm-hmm.
needs to be a movie done about him. You
I
know,
know. I think they're working on it.
I've heard they were. But before he became king of Mali, his older brother took a attempted to take a voyage, and they didn't know where they was actually going, but there's a wind current that goes from where, if you look at where Mali is or where the kingdom was, that goes and touches modern day Brazil, right? And so his one of the ships came back, but the other ones were supposedly lost. I don't know. Part of me feels like they made it, because even I spoke to one of my friends who's he's Panamanian, and he actually told me, but he lives here in Houston, but he came from Florida. He's like, yeah, we were here before before slavery. I was like, I'm like, he's my age. I'm like, how the hell do you know that? Like that, which is crazy to me, but it's also not surprising, right? Because if we were in Africa and we understood astrology, I mean understood astronomy, right? Like how can you not understand how to
How to travel
how to travel?
until the white man shows you. That, I mean, that just fits that narrative. Like,
Yeah,
we didn't know how to do nothing until that. Like, it just doesn't make sense.
yeah,
Being on this earth that long.
right, right. And I think about like the quote unquote the person who created the Pythagorean theorem.
Mm-hmm.
He discovered that after going to Egypt.
Mm-hmm. So he didn't discover it, you
He
know?
didn't discover it. He just put a name on it.
Right.
Yeah. But what are some other things that surprised you when you found out your lineage?
Um, I had a bunch of stuff. I think just, yeah, I think mainly just the free people thing. I think knowing that some of my family was on the Trail of Tears, because I didn't understand that Black Native struggle. I didn't understand. Now, I did grow up with my grandma, who's from Alabama, telling me that of the specific Native tribes that my family was like a part of and things like that, like the bloodline that I had from both her and my grandpa or whatever. But um I remember not believing it after a while, because I just got fed new narratives about who I was. And so it's interesting how you got to kind of go back to like I'm like, oh, my grandma told me this already. And then she had like family members give me like our little family book and all this stuff. And so able to kind of unpack some of that. Also, I think like some lineage to some different I think like recently finding out of like some on my dad's side, like some African chieftaincy, like actually like there's kind of from the Mende tribe basically, which I don't know much about, but I did a little research about that. And so just finding out stuff like that, like honestly, when you find out these stories, even when you find out basic stories like this person did this, like I found out my great grandpa used to have just all the newest, like he would have the TV set in there and and all the stuff, and like um just like different stuff. But just finding out little stories about your family, I think helps you kind of recognize who you are. Like, oh damn, all these people survived all this stuff they did, they had their story, like they have stories, and then I'm just a little piece of that, just trying to put it all together kind of thing. I think because I feel like it's a gift, or you're chosen. It's like a gift and a curse to be a storyteller. And I feel like I kind of I'm one of the people who was chosen to like tell stories. And so because of that, I have to do the research. I have to find out about who I am, and like uncover, all these mysteries. But pretty much everybody's the same. We all got everything in our family. We got some schemers, we got some amazing people, we got some, like we have everything. Like I think that's like the important thing to remember. Is like when you look at other people, it's like you could look at them like that, but I'm pretty sure there was somebody in your family who had that quality, because it's just the humanness. And it's like but also that certain families got certain qualities that they hold on to for a long time, even if you don't know you're doing something like somebody else. I think that was the coolest thing about learning my genealogy. I learned stuff I was doing today is stuff that they've been doing.
Mm.
I learned that there's so many people in my lineage who were teachers. I learned there's so many people in my lineage who are in athletics and you know all of these things, or that they resisted authority. Because I'm like, dang, I was always like, I don't like people telling me, like, like it's in corporate ways. I'm just like, I don't like that. And then I'm like, oh, okay, because we were never white people really weren't telling us what to do. Like they were busting back from the stories I heard back in the day. They were busting back. So I'm like, man, there it is. That
Yeah.
spirit, that fighting spirit, a little bit.
Yeah. So how do you think knowing and learning all these stories about your family has impacted you as a filmmaker and producer and scriptwriter?
Yeah, I think that I have a greater sense of purpose. Because I know that I'm not the only one. I just feel that it's not even really nobody told me to. I just kind of can tell. Like it's like a feeling you have. Like I'm sure it's just like when you feel you have more purpose, like a little more, you just kind of know that. But then learning more about your family and stuff. As far as being a filmmaker, I think for me it's like, okay, what is like, let's live out the purpose. I don't know fully what that looks like, but I'm gonna follow these steps and push myself because I can see there were so many people who did all this just for me to be alive. They didn't even know I existed, but it was just their resilience, their endurance, their devotion, their prayers that is like the reason why I'm here. So it's like I would kind of be disrespectful to just be like laying around. You know what I'm saying? Like it's kind of like, so what was that for? You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
you're gonna end the lineage here kind of thing, and that way. But and then on top of that, it's just like being able to tell stories, like and put more into my, like there's so many stories I found out about the specific family that also led me to historical truth. So now I'm unpacking history a little bit more. Now I'm like, oh, well, if this was them, then there has to be some history to this. So now let me find what that history is. And now I'm interested in telling this story. I loved when I saw seeing the Black Cowboy stuff because I was like, oh, I learned that about my family and,
Mhm.
stuff like that. So it's like now we're kind of more inclined to uncover what that means historically. Like, why is my great great grandpa during slavery time traveling to London? I didn't even know they had planes at that time. Like, well, how to get there? Why was white people okay with him getting there? How did he get away with it? There's so much to lean into there. Like, like either just telling that individual story or finding out, well, what was going on to where some people could do that. Like it's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. And I share with you like learning about, my genealogy when I learned
Mm-hmm.
that, Ramses the third was a cousin of mine. I was like, wow. And it's
That's
crazy
wild.
because I grew up, well, not really grew up, but I remember always being like into Egypt and stuff, and then learning
Mm-hmm.
that they really call themselves the Kemites and stuff. And I'm like, I don't think that was an accident. I think my bloodline was reaching back, and then it was kind of crazy when I learned that. I'm like, wow, this is crazy, right? And it is just kind of like you said, right? It showed me that I'm supposed to be doing what I'm doing,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like it's crazy when you and I'm still just scratching the surface, and I've been. I actually opened up an account with ancestry.com, and so I have a lot of cousins who pretty much have done all the research on my mom's side, and so I've been
Mm-hmm.
able to like go like it's like four generations up. And there was a cousin that I have, and my aunt used to tell me, she's like, yeah, they were already related to us. They just came back into the family. And I was like, I never understood that. Right. And
Mm-hmm.
so I have a I have a great grandfather with the same last name of this cousin. And I was like, and I text him, I was like, yo, this is how we're first related. And then this cousin's uh great grandfather is my uncle, and he died in the war. And so that's
Mm-hmm.
how we became cousins two ways,
Wow.
through great grandfather, and then secondly through my basically my granduncle. Yeah, my granduncle, because he's the sibling of my grandmother, right? And I was like, it's crazy because she told me this 10 years ago, and I remember like she never explained it, but I never really asked. And then
Mm.
when I seen it on the chart, I was like, oh snap, this is how we're related again. I was like, yo, this is so crazy.
That's why we gotta low key be asking those questions of like stuff we were told and then go back to that because it's like
Yeah.
there was some gems in there.
Yeah, and my aunt, she was like the family historian, and she actually was telling me all she was explaining the European line to us, like, she was like,
Mhm.
you're British, you're Scottish, Russian. And then I remember thinking as I learned more about slavery, and I'm like, oh snap, those were our potentially our handlers or our owners or whatever, right?
Mhm.
Because those some of the stuff she mentioned showed up in my genealogy. Um when I actually, or in my ancestry, whatever where you want to use. And I was like, wow, it just kind of like confirmed it. But then again, you also don't really know what you're really made of until you look at your parents, because whatever shows up in you is what's is effectively the highest majority. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yep.
So like, now I'm actually going to get my mom to do her genealogy so I can like get a deeper look, right? And then learning like historically you know about the Nigerians were the ones who had, or the Nigerian royal family had a really good relationship with the British. Um,
Mhm.
and most African Americans are Nigerian. And I found out that I'm like 44% or something like that, Nigerian or whatever. Um,
Mhm.
and so it's like you said, it's crazy how you look at the historical stuff and it like, and then you delve into your bloodline, you're like, oh snap, this lines up.
Yep.
And
It
so
starts to make sense.
yeah,
And
yeah,
then always be open into the fact that like there may be other stuff that is part of the story that we don't even know yet. That's still gonna come out.
right,
Like we're kind of uncovering stuff now just because it's like the age of information, and it's like it's gonna get more crazy. Like it's gonna, and I think that what I would urge Black folks, people of color, everything, is to stay open minded and remember that we've been extremely programmed to believe what we believe. So as like there's even some stories that we may have to let go of that we strongly believe because we're just like that's what we've learned. So that's like sometimes you attach yourself to an identity that may not even be yours just because you were told that. I mean, you see it in like the behavior in which like you see how music influences Black folks, and then you see like how some of the music influences kids and the things that they do and how they act, and now they're believing that they're this persona that some white man paid these people to act like. So it's like you may not even you think, oh, that's me, you know what I'm saying, like that's just how we, it's like it's not you really. I mean, it can be you now, but like so I think like as time goes on there's going to be more history and stuff that comes out that is unveiled that will probably have to Black folks to really be like, let me evaluate my relationship to this other story because there may be a greater story.
right, right. Um, do you think that social media is actually making us as a society better at telling stories, or do you think it's just making us more of like dopamine addicts?
Both. I think two things can exist at once, and I think it's like the eye of the beholder. No pun intended with the eye of the beholder, but whoever has the iPhone and where they're at, I think that's how they utilize it and that's what they take from it. I do think that everybody has to be super conscious to like not let it be that, but if you're most likely you're addicted a little bit, like like in some way, even if you're better at it than other people, there's some form of addiction there. So I just try to let use it more than I let it use me. But
Right.
also I don't take myself so serious. I'm just like I'm also a victim of capitalism. Like, like I'm on Twitter laughing. Like this is just part of my story. You know what I'm saying? Like I think it's boring to be a perfect person too. Like I think it gets really boring and it gets really unfun when you've done all the therapy and you're doing, all the words and you should everything you should eat and you whatever. And then it's just like now you become a little AI of yourself. Like it's just like this really boring, rigid version of yourself. So I think it's okay to like accept the parts of yourself that are a little flawed, that like wants to be in the rap beef, like who's thriving off of the Drake and Kendrick, you know what I'm saying? Like who's like, you know, like because that's like how it is to be a kid. It's like you don't care what the thing is, you don't care if people think it's stupid, if it's healthy, if it's whatever, you're thriving off that. And I feel like the more adults let themselves be in their kid nature, you know, and then I think as an adult, the extra step is, why the fuck am I why do I love this so much? Why do I care so much? For me, I'm interested because I love words, and I'm like listening to the storytelling, and it's like a battle of poetry and stuff, you know. So like I'm in a deeper, but I can recognize that that's why I'm nerding over this thing. Some other people literally see themselves as being Drake. Some guys believe they're Drake, and then some guys believe they're Kendrick. So they're like, he's weak, and they're battling over their ego, you know what I'm saying? So it's like there's nothing wrong with it, but you should know that's why you're battling. Like there's some people I'd be like, I don't like that whatever person. I'm like, I have no good it's probably my ego. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, but at least I can name that it's corny for the reason why I don't like them. It's not like a real, you know, thing or whatever. But
Yeah, and to speak on that too, the one thing that I found very interesting is people have really taken that song Not Like Us, and it's gone into a different place where I don't even think that song, I like it, and like I've seen videos of people crit walking with it.
mm-hmm.
Too. And you know, Kendrick grew up in a blood neighborhood. And the thing I love about Kendrick is that you would have never known that, I guess, unless you listen to his lyrics and you're from LA. But he
Yeah.
said in a documentary, but you can't really tell that he's from whatever side.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like the Not Like Us is taking on a story of its own. And
Yeah.
sadly, I think things are getting out of hand with these fanatics. And
Mm-hmm.
I ain't gonna lie, I personally laughed about when I heard about someone spray painting Not Like Us at the OVO store in London.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, yo, that's very funny. But I'm like, if I was that business owner, I'd be mad as all. But it's just
Yeah.
like you said, and I've also I talked to this with my fiance about this. It's like what made the Katt Williams interview so good wasn't that it was necessarily truthful. I think that's up for question,
Mm-hmm.
right? But it was entertaining.
Mm-hmm.
And so when he says, you know, so and so tried to get me in the room or whatever, you like, and I'm like, people don't really, and I know you probably have come to this epiphany, but I came to it a long time ago. People don't really care about the truth; they just want to be entertained. And so
Yeah.
whether Drake is a pedophile or not, it 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 flows well because of what's happening to Diddy or with all of these, you know, Weinstein getting put out and stuff like that. So it's like, you know, it's more the story around it and what he's saying in the song. We don't know if it's true or not. But then a video popped up of him kissing, quote unquote, allegedly kissing a 17-year-old on stage. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's like really crazy. Like, you know, this whole thing
Yeah,
was
it's like it becomes a whole, I mean, to the point of the power of storytelling, there it is. Now it's a whole story. And the story became this battle, really. It's like, you know, Kendrick says it like, you make music to pacify them, you make music to electrify them. And I think it kind of is like, has become a story of colonizer versus the people. You know what I'm saying? Like whether you like some people may not see, but I think that's where people's investment is coming from. It's like the authentic Black experience or the commercial Black experience that we're given. Like which one is more, who wins? You know, like it's like this way bigger thing. And I think that too, with that being said, it's like I think that there's space to say that both are true now to our story, because even though we've been given a commercialized um picture of what we are, it's now a part of our story still. Like we still have to go through history, and that still has to be a thing. It's like it's real. Like we may not like it, we may not like the representation of us how it is, you know, whatever. Or sometimes some of us love it, and it's like fuck it, you know, we don't care, you know, you know, and the whole they not like us thing is like it's like the people who were like, we don't, that's not us. Like we really are not them. We are not
yeah,
that fake version of blackness, and then like this is like, and I think how people pick their sides kind of tells you kind of where they feel they align, whether they will say that or not, like
Yeah.
they openly say that or not. And that's not even, I like a lot of Drake songs, but in like for me personally, when I listen to it, I'm like that Kendrick was a way better, because I'm listening for metaphors, and I'm just listening for deep, I'm listening for crazy bars,
Yeah.
um but yeah, I think like it gives the point of the storytelling piece. I think the power of storytelling, and I think Katt Williams starting the year off
Yeah.
with being a great storyteller, because he's only entertaining because he's a great storyteller. He knows when to pause. He knows when to Shannon say, "Cat." Sometimes he knows go to go. Well, what do you think, Shannon? Like it's like that whole, it's a theater
Yeah, it's
act.
like
You know what I'm saying? And it's
it's
like,
like I'm willing you in with the silence, and then
yes.
speaking out, pulling you out of the water.
Yes, I'm lulling you in with silence. I'm jabbing you with certain words. I'm making you see a picture. Like he's giving us a show. Like he's giving us a show. And I think that there also is a part of like he's always been also that guy where it's like commercial versus real raw. Like
Mhm.
it's like people kind of root for the real raw eventually, because it's like we eventually get tired. I think everybody gets a little tired of like, okay, so what's next? And also people like to see people fall. It's like they like to see giants crash, because it's like, oh, now you're just human like us and we feel better about ourselves,
Yeah.
like so.
It goes back to like if you look at like MJ and the Bulls, right? People got tired of seeing them win, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, Drake has been regarded as the number one rapper. If you just look at his accolades and sales, right, for the past 15
Mm-hmm.
years, people are tired of seeing him win. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then I think when you look at Kendrick, the one thing I will say, I think Kendrick, the way he raps, I think he had his life path is more relatable to what I would call the core rap audience that started in the US, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I'm saying? Like he
Mm-hmm.
grew up in LA, he dealt with, drug addiction. I think everybody dealt with drug addiction in their family or deals with it. He talks about that and stuff. But when you look at Drake, we see Degrassi, right? He grew up primarily Jewish, and for the longest, I never knew there were Black Jewish people. Uh,
Mm.
but then I
There's a lot.
learned, I learned that blacks were,
Origins of Judaism.
yeah, yeah, and it goes back to the other point you were saying, like when we learn the true history of stuff, right? But and when I think of like, I got to go back to Not Like Us, because in my hometown there were like two sides of town that didn't like each other. Now it's a lot more. It's a lot more. It's like Chicago now, where there's not really gangs, they're more cliques. And so I can
Yeah.
like literally hear people in the club, see people in the club playing Not Like Us, and they talking about their ops on the other side of the club.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So it's
Yep.
like, to me now, this song is taking on a different life, because it's like Not Like Us, Not Like Us. It's like, I don't know. I feel like it might become people saying like No Diddy, or
Yeah.
replace with No Diddy. Like they like Not Like Us. Like
Yeah, he gave us, he let everybody be a part of it. Like he gave us all permission to be a part of it, basically. Like, all
yeah.
right, because now people do. Like I've used it even so far, like work, like oh they ain't like like to my boss, like talking about some people. So it's just like it's just funny how that it's like now I get to be a part of it, and people love that. People love being a part of stuff.
Yeah, and this is the thing. And Idris Elba talked about like AI. He said he doesn't think it's going to replace writers, right? Because
Yeah,
you can't. And then like X, she talked about AI being a parrot, right? Like you can't you telling a good story isn't about repetition per se, right? You see what I'm saying? Like it's not about
yeah.
like, oh, just put it into a computer and then boom, this is a great story. Because the story gotta be relatable. It
It's
gotta
like
it
the
gotta
AI
pull
can only do the skeleton. It can't
it.
give you the body. It can't give the heart, the mind, the whatever. Like it can give you a base. Like if you say tell a story about two lovers, it's gonna give you a very generic, whatever because you can even feel it, like when it's like, this isn't human though, like, and that, like, that's something only you going through your life experience, only, even if, even race wise, it's like every Black person in their household, they still have some specific, even if you get down to your parents' name or something, it's like, there's these little nuances that make up a story. And to that point, I think that's why good storytellers are very nuanced and very detailed. People who are very, very, very in the detail are the people who bring a story to life. Like, instead of just having a room and the characters sitting in there and they're frustrated, why aren't we painting the whole couch red to like show their mood? You know what I'm saying? Like, it may be a bold choice to put the couch in red and then put them in white. It's like, now they're whatever, but maybe they show that innocence of that person. So like, understanding color, understanding all of this stuff, put no very little lighting, but they're sitting in a dark room with red and there's just a little spotlight. I mean, that says something total different. So it's like, how are you making those little decisions to bring life to the story?
Yeah, yeah, I can tell you really been studying because I when I studied, I remember when I was like, this is early in my entrepreneurial career, I was looking at colors and stuff for like logos, and I
Mm-hmm.
just never thought, I'm like, oh, they just choosing that because it look good, and then I'm like, okay, so Facebook chose blue for trust, and
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of funny because when you look at Meta now, they have issues with trust. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you look at Walmart. Walmart uses blue, same reason. um, or a similar reason. Their slogan is always low prices, but they've been raising their prices. But their color blue is for trust, right? And you look at Google, it looks like it looks like the rainbow, almost like an homage to the LGBT community. But they
Mm.
want to show that they're inclusive. Their slogan used to be do no evil, but then I guess they started doing evil and they took it down. So it's like when I started just looking at like definitions of color, I'm like, wow, like that. I went down that rabbit hole. So that's why I like to, like, even when I was deciding on my logo, like I'm like, I want, it's a mouth, right? And then you see the gold tooth, and the gold tooth is a way of saying like, hey, we're all kings. But then also
Mm.
too, like back in the day, if you had money, you got a gold tooth, right?
Yeah.
You know,
Mm-hmm. Love
but
that.
yeah, but it's like I like how you say that because I can't think of any movie in particular, but like how they're set up the scene where someone comes in and you can't really see him, and then the light cuts on or whatever and stuff. It's just like
Yeah.
that's lighting, so.
Yeah. Lighting is powerful. Sound, color theory. I mean, yeah, you got to study. You got to do more than, you got to understand how everything on screen is basically is telling a story. Everything you put in a space, if it's in the space and it's in the screen, there better be a purpose for it.
So what? So do you think you need all these elements in your favor to tell a good story, or do you think it's more of like it depends on the individual story?
I think it depends on the story, because you could have a really powerful moment between two people who are sitting in the middle of a grass field with nothing around them, but even that's a big statement. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, even
Yeah.
that's very intentional and a very big statement. Um, and I guess if I did that, it would be very intentional. It would be to tell a message or whatever. So I think people who are just not aware of the message they're telling, they're probably not doing it as well. Um, and that's something I'm just trying to get better at. Like, what's in the scene and why is it in the scene, or what can I take away that makes it this moment more like, how can I make these characters, they're in the middle of a fight, how do I make the tension go up by the space that they're in, like, what
Hmm.
if they have to fight at dinner when their boss just came over and they're trying to get a promotion, but now it's like the tension's there and it's like, they're trying not to get into it, like, honey, I just said, did this, it's like causing, like, whatever, it's like,
Yeah.
or like they keep talking and you're like, stop talking, but you can't say it. So it's like these little ways that you, like, from what I've learned, it's like You could have a normal argument where there was no boss and there was just them talking about the problem. I'll say this: the difference between, I think, a powerful storyteller and like somebody who can get better at it. You could have an argument between a husband and wife, and they're the only ones there, and it's just an argument. And obviously, the way the actors do it, like they could be really powerful actors, and then all they need is that space to go off. But you could also say, as a writer, I want to put them in a more uncomfortable position. If you're going for laughs, then maybe it is the boss thing. If you're going for emotional discomfort, maybe you're inviting their parents over who never supported the marriage anyway. If you're going for awkward shit, like it's just like there's so many different ways you can say, let me write this in a different way. Or if it's like you're not adding people to it, it's like, say one of them is like fucking trying to take a bath, and it's like they just like they left their phone and they was getting their bath prepared. They left their phone in the bathroom. The other one went in, closed the door. Hey, my phone's in there, like now like I'm scared, like get out. Like I didn't, and like that causes a fight. It's like, it's just, there's so many, like cheating wise, like it's like, fuck, instead of just like having them find out another cliche way. But it's like, I don't know. It's just, there's so many ways to tell story. That's why there's really no bad way. I don't think there's a bad way. It's just how you do it.
Yeah. And when you was talking about conflict between the couple, I just thought of Baby Boy, right? Like he finds out that he has the Snoop is sleeping over our house. And so as a guy, we're like, you letting this guy sleep over here? I know I'm not contributing, but then you just gonna let this man sleep here?
Mm-hmm.
Ain't you, Joey? You cheating on me? Like I think about that too. And then I think before that, didn't he get choked out by Vin Rames?
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. He's a baby boy. That's what he shows throughout the whole movie. He kind of emphasizes that baby boy piece, like this guy who's trying to be a man and wants to be a man, but he's not doing the things that a mature man does. And so it's like getting choked out, having somebody else not paying, helping your baby mom, whatever, having another man, like it's all these things that like that John Singleton, I believe he did that, is those decisions he made to emphasize the story.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
real. I'm sure he knows real people like that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's cool. I don't know how you're doing on time, but I don't want to go too over. I know you got a lot on your plate. I know you're getting ready to go to college, go back.
Yeah,
So
man. Again, for the third time. I love a degree, clearly.
yeah, yeah. Cool. And we could talk about this more, but would love to be able to put your that Nike spec video that you was working on
Mm-hmm.
at the end of this, so people can watch it, because I remember you was
Okay.
telling me about it. And I don't want to give it away because I want people to see it, but
Mm-hmm.
I can't wait to see it. So I don't know if it's already have you released it yet?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, you did. Okay, okay.
It's on my Instagram page. Yeah, it's right there in the pin.
Oh, okay, because I saw your post and I was like, I wasn't sure you released it yet.
Yeah, I just released it on Tuesday. It already
Okay.
it's doing well. We're at 6,000 likes. We're at 6,000 views. In a couple days. We got like almost 300 likes or so, something like that. So, it's getting a lot of love on that one, which is really cool. Supposed to kind of recognize AAPI month. Shout out to the Asians. It's kind of influenced by my bestie who's Vietnamese, and her story of wanting to play in the Vietnamese league for women. And so she's kind of I just heard her story and asked her like, well, why didn't you play back in the day? Because I played. And she was just like, because I had this pressure to be something else, and people who look like me don't do this and all this stuff. And so now she's been training and just doing all this stuff, and she's like dedicated to that. So I just thought it would be a really cool story to be like, oh, like we can all, everybody can relate. We can't all relate to being Vietnamese, but we can all relate to that feeling of like feeling pulled somewhere else but dreaming of something else. And so for me, see, even though that was not about my specific culture, my specific whatever, it was really personal to me, because I wanted to be a filmmaker, but I felt like it wasn't realistic. I should do some whatever else. I'm doing all these other things. And then it's like, no, fuck this. I'm gonna do what I want to do. You know, like I'm gonna go after what I really want to do. And then since I've been going after, I've been getting into festivals. I've been getting certain opportunities, working on certain projects I didn't think I could. You know, getting a full tuition coverage to go to one of the best film schools in the country. Like for me now, it's like it's showing me that was my path. That's what I was supposed to do. So it's like the message of that is like, don't, you know, like I even think there's like, I do the voiceover in it, but it's like, you know, like your imagination is your blueprint, and like, you know, like you gotta like believe that, see it, and start chipping at it, because there's probably a reason you want to do it. You know, not everybody wants to do the same thing, so whatever you want to do is probably because it's for you.
Yeah, and I can't relate to being Vietnamese either, but I love me some good pho. So
Same.
yeah, but yeah, like you said, right? You know, I can, the way you describe it, and I'm gonna watch it, and we're gonna put it at the end of this interview. But like, you know, my mom told me, you go to college, you're gonna be good, and I struggled with like getting a tech job that I wanted. Like I had to move to the Bay Area to get what I wanted, right? So like, I think we all, especially people who chase their dreams and got into it or are still chasing it, can definitely relate to it. And I think it just ties to the overall theme of me and you talking. Like, is when you're telling the story, it's not necessarily about what happens in the story. It's about the person viewing it or hearing it, watching it. How much do they connect to it and relate it to their life, right? Like,
Yep.
you know, like I've never been in a game, but I can really, I like Kendrick. A lot of stuff he raps, you know, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like in Drake, I've never done a lot of stuff he's done, but I'm like, wow, he paints a really, really cool picture. Like, wow, you
Yeah.
kind of got to watch out when you get this famous, you know? Like,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So cool. We gonna wrap it there. Hey, this has been great. Tierra, thanks again for, you know, taking the time, you know, with me and with us and stuff. You know, everybody, thanks for listening in. Again, this is Corey with Stay Trapping. Trap Talks will be discussed the intersection of culture and tech. Tierra Frost. Hey, I'm gonna go on and put it out there. Future, like, you know, what is it? Oscar? Yeah, future Oscar for
Yes,
a film.
sir.
We gonna put that out there, like, you know. So, and I know if I ever want to do a film or something, I'm definitely hitting you up, you know. So, and do me a
Sure.
favor too. You need to figure out DDJ's other voice. Like, you need to figure that out, get it on recording. It's so funny. Like
I'm gonna do my research. I'm gonna try and catch
yeah, yeah.
it.
All
All
right, y'all. We out.
right, peace, y'all.
We're not meant to win them all. Failure can be a friend. Inspiration, a partner.
Vì thế cần cơ chế đặc thù tiến độ các dự án. Ví dụ từ việc áp dụng
Tới. Dạ. Chậm lại.
Patience, a tool. Imagination, our blueprint. And the grind, the journey, our best teacher.